Hello, everyone. It is Will and Carter back at it again. Today, as you can see now with our little box below, we are going to be talking about Team Dignitas and their roster into this upcoming lock-in. Um, Before we start, I just want to say, we recently heard that several members on CLG and potentially other teams as well have COVID. Obviously, we hope for their speedy recovery and that everything ends up going well. Hopefully, teams can start playing from home again. We got some vaccines out, but we're not quite there. So
Yeah,
hopefully,
I don't think
everyone
there's
stays
gonna be
safe.
any going into the studio for
Yeah,
the next season.
yeah. I mean, these content houses or whatever are sick, but let's
Yeah, but if
just
you're doing them, just like be safe.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, yeah, we hope everyone on CLG is safe, especially after we just talked about them yesterday. But for tonight, we'll be talking about Dignitas. To be honest, this is not one of the favored teams this year.
So
Um,
Dignitas, oh man, it's hard to talk about Dignitas right now. They used to have some really
it's tough.
interesting pieces of their team. They used to before their current mid laner have Froggen on the team, which like Froggen wasn't doing great, but he was like interesting. Their AD carry at the time was Johnson, who was kind of up and coming. Uh, Top laner, they had this was the Huni team for a while. And they had Viper, who like definitely wasn't great, but like
Hmm.
oh, the reason that I'm so bummed about the squad is because the original squad already was so lackluster, and looking across the board, it's mostly downgrades.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this roster, you look back in this roster, and even just this past year, just as you were saying, I think they were the team, correct me if I'm wrong, that switched their entire roster midway through the season. Is that right?
You might be thinking of Immortals,
Am
who
I thinking of
switched their
Immortals?
roster. They changed their academy roster to their main roster out of nowhere because
Ah,
apparently
yeah, that
Xmithie's
was the
pretty
one.
good.
So we'll
But they
we'll
still,
talk about that more later. But
exactly.
regardless, I mean, this team has switched up a lot last year, and this year, uh, switching up even more. To start off in the top lane, we have Fake God, who has played for 100 Thieves before, totaling not too many games, but back in 2019, it looks like he had
Sounds right.
a couple games in the spring, and then they actually let him play for a little while. They let him play 15-ish games in the summer. Uh, the bad news is that we all know that 100 Thieves wasn't too hot a couple years ago, right? We're putting them potentially breaking top three this year. They weren't doing that a couple years back, and Fake God
Yeah.
didn't get re-signed somewhere. He went to C9's academy, right? Or so no, sorry, he just came straight to Dignitas afterwards.
Yeah.
C9 was a moment. He actually didn't get signed anywhere, not even C9's academy for a while there.
Yeah,
Um,
you also have to remember that like while 100 Thieves did play Fake God for a while, I think it was because of like imports at the time or something like that. They
yeah.
had Someday in like the backs. They weren't really like trying to use this guy as much as they could. They've always had the best top laner in the league like on their team since 100 Thieves has been an organization. So it's
Hmm.
like this I'm not really impressed with the signing here. I think like obviously at one point they had Hooney, and I can see why you might want Hooney off your roster if maybe like the coin flips, like we mentioned, are going bad. Then they had Viper, who was just as always kind of he was he was never a great top laner. He was it used to be a Riven one trick, and he still loves to play Riven. And
Hmm.
the a lot of LCS teams have been trying to craft him into a more well-rounded like top laner. But he's never really shown great in the LCS. But
Hmm.
even from then, I would rather take Viper on my team like they used to have over this kind of unknown player.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to be looking at any like team of new players to succeed right now, it's going to be kind of that FlyQuest roster. I think they have all the kind of the crazy like academy pieces coming up. And so just like some of these other academy signings, when looking at like these academy signings against someone like FlyQuest's, it's just unimpressive.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, kind of continuing. to move on because we were talking about this briefly, and could be mistaken, but they were supposed to potentially sign Sneaky here to the ADC role, and
Rumors.
on rumors, right? And that's all it was. But
Yeah,
even just
maybe too
rumors
much
and
of a
getting excited
stream.
about that, if you're a
Yeah,
Dignitas
yeah,
fan, right? Now you have Neo. Um,
yeah. Did you know who Neo was before we recorded this video?
I've never seen
Because
him
I'll be honest, I did
before.
not.
So what we have for him basically is that for a little while there, in the off season, sorry, he was part of Immortals in the off season. Before that, he was part of Optic Gaming, which was Immortals before
Yeah,
Immortals existed, rebranded, and I that wasn't that long ago, right? That
no,
was a couple years back, and there's nothing really of note from there. Then he went off of that side. Um, Eventually ended up at Dignitas Academy last June through the end of the year, and now has been kind of brought up to the ADC role. So maybe he's been doing well, right? But if we're looking at the tournament results, there was nothing. I mean, Dignitas Academy got seventh. They're kind of being the Dignitas of the academies.
I honestly think Neo going into this lock-in is the worst starting AD carry of any team, and I don't think Dignitas is even the worst team of any team I'm looking at going into that lock-in tournament.
Oh no, not at all. There are worse still. We're gonna
Yeah,
talk about them.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, there are videos to come, folks. But Neo, I think, is the worst starting AD carry because even some of these lower teams have AD carries that I'm interested in. It's just like,
hmm
and when saying all of this, I would love for Neo to prove me wrong. I would love to be shown that like the North American Academy system is producing high quality North American talent. Uh, but it's just like, what are these? Like, who is this guy? What
Yeah,
is he doing? I've
yeah.
never seen his face, and even before this, the rumors that I've also heard surrounding Dignitas, besides Sneaky, is that Dignitas had Johnson on contract, and Johnson really, really wanted out of his contract with Team
hmm
Dignitas. So I think Dig let him out of his contract, but theoretically, Dignitas could have held on to Johnson, who was a really, really good, promising upstart player, so
Yeah,
bad that he was one of the hottest commodities this offseason, rumors say. Uh, so it's just like you had a really good AD carry if you knew the pieces surrounding it like were gonna be bad. You can just say sorry, sorry Johnson, give it a year. But
yeah.
they
And I mean, here's the
they
thing, right?
downgraded
Is we're not
instead.
even looking at pieces that are that bad, right? Like,
No, there are some pieces to this roster I like.
yeah. So we're kind of starting on the wrong foot here. I think I started us in top lane. That's on me. But
No,
like,
no, no.
we'll eventually end on a good note here. But
Yeah.
pieces
We're
around
we're
him,
getting it out of
right?
the way.
If we're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about the immediate piece around him, I always like talking about that ADC and support combo. We have
Yep.
Afromu, who,
The best player on this team.
yeah, it's Dardoch might not like that very much, but
Yeah, yeah, they built it around Dardoch, rumors are. Uh,
um, Afromu is a fantastic support. He's
yeah.
been a good support. He's been here for a long time. He's on CLG for a very long time. Um,
Yeah, he had crazy days on CLG, and even though like Aphromu was not playing for one of these top support teams, I would give my dark horse support of last year to be Aphromu. I actually think in
mhm,
some ways he even outperformed players like Ignar. Just Aphromu is so incredible. He's just on Dignitas. Him and Johnson were super great. Even like making players like FBI and Who He sweat at times,
yeah,
just to like, and they were like on a much worse team. So you kind of have to look at Aphromu and be a little excited to see what's going on in that bot lane because it's not
yeah.
even like Neo at the time. And I guess there's also the angle. Sorry to be jumping around so much.
No,
Is
you're
that
good.
Aphromu has always been really good at like taking in new AD carries in his lane. He's
Mhm,
kind of the guy who brought up Stixay initially to be where he's at. He then played
yep,
with Cody Sun for a little while, another upstart AD carry, and that 100 Thieves roster, I believe, with Cody Sun and Aphromu. Uh, was like last place in the spring, like spring finals that year against Liquid. Uh, So Afremu just like very, very
You
consistently
mean second place in
second
the
place. Yes, they were in the
yeah, yeah.
finals. They did not
They
win though.
won the spring and they got second to Team Liquid in the playoffs for spring that year. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, with my point being Cody's son, who like only had a little bit of time on Immortals before that,
Yeah.
like and definitely needed that kind of extra mentoring. He then goes and plays with Johnson, another once again same story, new AD carry, becomes a really really strong AD carry that gets traded away. So like Aphromoo has
Absolutely.
always been nursing up these baby AD carries, and making them he's churning out talent.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and maybe that's something that he can bring to Neo as well. I don't know. I don't
Exactly.
think we
That's kind
could
of
have
where it all
expected.
fits together.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if we could have expected the same Cody Sun that we see now initially either. So maybe this is just us being very nervous about Neo,
Yeah.
which is it, prove it again, like you said, prove us wrong. I would love to see it. I think everyone loves an underdog story that comes out of nowhere. Just don't beat TSM. They're my team. Please let them win. Um.
I don't
Anyway,
know, tactical to
continue.
do it for me. He'll do it.
Continuing along here. Kind of bringing out more things we're a little nervous for. We've got Saligo in the mid
Yeah,
lane.
Soligo in the mid lane. So Soligo is kind of something, in case you haven't noticed, we haven't really been able to talk that much about like the specifics of Fake God and Neo's careers because they are like new players basically on the LCS.
Yeah.
Soligo is someone who has had a little time before on 100 Thieves.
Yep.
He was kind of a byproduct, I think, at the time. What it was the 100 Thieves had just signed Bang off SKT and was also playing Someday at the time, which consumed
Yep.
their two import slots, and they needed a native mid laner, so they went with Soligo. And Soligo was fine. He wasn't like Soligo was never like a super super strong mid laner, but he always held his own. The problem with that particular 100 Thieves roster was actually Bang very unexpectedly playing pretty poorly, uh,
Mm,
and not being
not being
the
bang.
the world class AD carry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
so like if you're coming in here and not asking Saligo to be a huge hyper carry, I like it. But I don't know if that's like what they're thinking when they're signing Saligo. Because
Yeah.
there are even other like better supportive mid laners in this league. I would argue Pobelter's one.
Mhm.
Fnatic has Niski now, so maybe that deal is always going to go through. Power of Evil is like kind of a team. He loves those control mages to help team support in late game. Uh, yeah, so like Sligo is someone who's like he's definitely more interesting to talk about and probably better slash stronger than Fake God or Neo will be, I imagine, out of the gate.
Mhm.
It's just like he's still not one of my favorite mid lane signings because at a certain point, even though I really really like Saligo's credentials, you have to look like I don't think Saligo's beating Pobelter. I don't think
Yeah.
Saligo's beating Jensen. I don't think Saligo's beating Perks and start going down that list. And after kind of going down that list, it's hard for me to like really really hype this guy up. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's really all I got.
I was just gonna say. I mean, he's been trying to get better. Obviously, those moments when he did show up with Hundred Thieves and Hundred Thieves really just, especially in hindsight, really dropped the ball. Right? They had someday they had a Bang, as you said, Afromu. Um,
I
they
think
ended up
Meteos.
they had
Uh,
Afromu back then with Hundred
yeah,
Thieves,
they did.
and
They had, and then they had contracts, and oh boy, that was a fun roster. Never mind.
that was a fun roster, and they got 10th out of 10th in the spring,
Uh,
and they got
but
8th in the summer.
you're no, you're
Um,
right. You're right. I concede.
they just dropped the ball, right? But that being said, in academy he's been doing a lot better. So right after that, he was in academy for 100 Thieves. 2019 summer playoffs, they won 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. Since then, they've been holding fifth ish or higher for the academy.
Yeah,
But this is the problem, right? We're talking about top half of academy coming in
yeah.
and trying to carry or be a major carry. We're looking at this team. They need a major carry, right? Be a major carry on a what's estimated to be like an eighth slot team this year.
Which
Um,
kind of brings us naturally into this final piece of the Dignitas roster, talking about who we think the carry is going to be. It's going to be Joshua Dardoch himself.
Yeah.
Uh, Dardoch, I like the rumors of the offseason, like I mentioned, was that this roster was built around Dardoch, uh, which doesn't really kind of excuse, in my mind, the pieces surrounding Dardoch being kind of as unimpressive as they are, just to make Dardoch shine more. Uh, but like he is gonna have to be the guy who's being a super consistent carry. I think he can do
Yeah.
it. I think he showed signs of being able to do it this past fall. Maybe no, this past summer. My apologies. Uh,
Mhm.
it's it could work. It really could. I think Dardoch is one of these dark horse junglers right now. All the junglers in the league look insane. Almost all that is. Also, kind of interestingly, under Dardoch is Acadian, who's another former LCS face. Uh, the kind of funny thing about Acadian being on an academy squad was once
Mhm.
I'll tell you a story of it was the third split that Liquid won, where TSM met them in the finals, and it was like TSM's first time going to finals in forever, with Acadian as their jungler, who was brought up after being in their academy squad. So Acadian comes out of these academy squads and starts wrecking on main rosters very frequently. I
Yeah.
don't think Dignitas are going to try to do that. I think they're going to try to stick with Dardoch, who is known to be super good. I think is probably better than Acadian, in all honesty. It's just
Mhm.
Dardoch has had so many chances,
So
right?
so my
Things have
concern here, right, is that a jungler sometimes can't. I it definitely depends how good the jungler is, but a jungler can't always be the total carry, right? The pieces around him have to move in some sense. If
yeah.
Afro moves busy taking care of Neo, I don't see Afro being able to help him. Fake Out and Saligo, I'm not sure they can either. And you have to remember, Dardoch is good, and we can say he's been on bad rosters. Fine, right?
Uh,
But
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 the
that's what I'm
thing,
about to bring up, right? For a while there in the spring, he was on TSM. He had Broken Blade and Bjergsen to gank, and they got fifth in spring, fourth in playoffs that year. You
yeah,
could say that
Dardoch.
might just be because of the double lift effect on I think his Team Liquid, right? Um, yeah, that was right before I think double lift came in, and I mean Dardoch just couldn't get it done. He just
Now he's
he
been
just couldn't
on.
get it done.
And the other thing to be considering is that like Dardoch has been on every kind of roster because Dardoch has gone through so many teams. Reading like the list right now, Dardoch has played for TSM, Dardoch has played for Team Liquid,
Yep.
Dardoch has played for not Immortals, or he has played for Immortals.
Yep.
Dignitas or Dardoch has played for CLG.
Yep.
Dardoch has been through these teams before, and every team kind of keeps bouncing him. Uh, there might be a reason that Dardoch keeps getting thrown out of these rosters very frequently. There
Yeah.
might be surrounding his toxicity and stuff like that. Uh, so it's just like I get nervous. I get nervous, man, when I see people relying heavily on this guy who like clearly has some sort of problem
Yeah.
communicating with team,
Yeah.
and whose problems are so unconsolable with a player of Dardoch's quality that they need to kick him nonetheless.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, okay. So at this point, we've been here for a little while, and it's time to wrap up.
Yeah.
I just, with that in mind, Dardoch possibly being the piece to go around, but with all of that of his history too, just kind of being the bouncing piece between big teams, I think my pick is Afromu. I think if we're looking at supports across everyone, he's in a pretty good place. I am concerned about his lane partner, as I always am, right, when I'm talking about who to pick in the bot lane. But given that he has a history of building up ADCs, I think this actually might work pretty well, where it's more of a top diff or something like that, and the bot lane's just doing what they can, and they probably don't die too much at the end of it all. The support dies more often than others, so it's kind of might not be a great move for me to pick Afro Mu as my support if he has to start dying for his team. But I think that's the best I can do with picking someone from Dignitas this year.
Yeah. I mean, so I do like this theory of like maybe Afrom's going to play super well with Neo, and I actually think it might start to happen. I can imagine Neo being a good AD carry under Afromu's arm, kind of. I'm
Mm,
still picking Dardoch as my player on this team, which is kind of tough considering like I don't really recommend you pick up Dardoch over more of these top junglers, but if it's one of these five for me, I think I'm going with Dardoch. Dardoch, like
yeah,
even if he has like some communication problems, even if like he might like who knows? I don't wish that he gets kicked off Dignitas, but like maybe he will get kicked off Dignitas. Before then, he's gonna be a piece of Dignitas that is getting super ahead. If
mm,
these players cannot like if these laners in particular live up to like kind of our expectations of being underwhelmed by them, I think Dardoch is gonna be the player who Dignitas will be playing through, and who like will be the carry for this team. I don't think it'll probably work out and beat some of these topper team, these like higher up to the top teams.
yeah.
But that's kind of what how I see the season going. Dardoch being like a central piece surrounding Dignitas' success.
Hey man, Dardoch's a top 8 jungler this year, and we have yet to talk about the next two teams.
Oh
So
man,
yeah,
yeah.
that's gonna be a fun one. All right, that's all the time we got here today. For today's video, we won't be able to have any visual updates on screen as we go. You get as far as the Dignitas logo today, but hopefully in the near future we can start tagging you guys along, bringing you along with some graphics so you can better follow the conversation. But anyway, aside from that, it's been a fun one. This is a bit sadder of a roster to go over, and the next 2 days will also be a little bit like that. But this weekend, we are going to come up with some new content ahead of the lock in tournament. Should be a lot of fun. And yeah, see you again tomorrow.